This week on One Day Leader, our leaders will respond to the global pandemic that has hit our shores. Sanwanani and a warm welcome nina nonke makhaya namgela yoge intombi yakwamtimandi uPearl Shongwe khona ku One Day Leader. Now tonight on our show we tackle a global uncertainty called Covid-19. The sudden emergence of the virus is a reminder of the power that infectious diseases have to turn a planet of over 7 billion people into one affected community. Entire economies have found themselves at the mercy of the virus. Right here at home, the impact to our economy could be as far-reaching as over 50 billion rand. Now, more than ever, we need decisive leadership, and I hope that these 6 leaders can be just that. Tonight, they will answer the question: if you were the president of South Africa, how would you respond to a global pandemic in this country? Now, for this special edition of our show, our contestants will showcase their leadership skills by examining this matter in a new debate format. But more on that a bit later on. Now, you too at home can join the conversation by visiting our social media pages. We are on Twitter and Instagram at One Day Leader, and on Facebook we are One Day Leader Season 8. Now leaders, let us hear your vision statements. Leader 1, good evening.
Perhaps this time we should look outside our immediate borders. Not because we lack the ability to come up with the necessary policies and solutions, but to learn from the mistakes of other nations. In Iran, in Britain, in Italy, the problem exacerbated because they failed to meet the problem with the necessary stringent policies. If we do not act with the necessary urgency, we risk to suffer the same fate. Fellow South Africans, this solution is people-inspired. It highlights the paramount importance of our health. Masizinakekele, masiqaphele. Inkosi isikelele iAfrika.
Thank you very much, Leader 1. Leader 2, good evening to you. Your vision statement, please.
As a nation, we conquered white domination. As a nation, we conquered white oppressive regime. And as a nation, we conquered Miss Universe. United, we stood as a nation. Separated, we fell as a nation. So let us be joined together in joining our hands in fighting and standing against this pandemic that seems to have attacked all of us. It attacks us as a nation. We cannot defeat it as individuals. Let our African Ubuntu rise and be at the top right now. South Africa, Africans, join me in building this nation to a progressive tomorrow. Mayihlome Africa.
Thank you very much, Leader 2. Good evening, Leader 3. Your vision statement, please.
The world has become a global village, and we are now connected more than we have ever been. Should coronavirus gain solid foot, Africa could easily and quickly replace Europe and become the center for this pandemic. What we need is a continental-driven and sustainable approach and an integrated Africa of catalysts for change, surgeons for humanity and advocates for Africanism that are representing a dynamic and ideologically sounding force in a global arena. Gugulethu.
Thank you very much, Leader 3. Hello, Leader 4. Welcome. Your vision statement, please.
The youth of 1976 showed great resilience and strength. We stand a chance today as young people to disseminate information that can save our lives, to distribute accurate information about the spread of the coronavirus, its cause, and how we can take care of ourselves.
Thank you very much, Leader 4. Good evening, Leader 5. Your vision statement, please.
The creation of a peaceful and prosperous society that includes all people of all races, regardless of gender and transcending sexual orientation, depends on the development of citizens with a sociological understanding for their society so that they can meaningfully contribute to them, restoring prosperity and promoting the cause of peace for all. South Africa, I am the one you've been waiting for.
Thank you very much. And finally, hello to you, Leader 6. Your vision statement, please.
My voice, my mind, my life. 3 things I will use to fight for those whose suffering is silenced. Youth hindered by a lackluster education system. Women under siege by the patriarchy from the gender pay gap to gender-based violence. Queer bodies systemically excluded from all sectors of society. The 99% who've been repeatedly failed by the state and will not survive this pandemic if we fail to address their concerns. And Black Africans who continue to live under the dictatorship that is the legacy of apartheid. South Africa, I give you my voice, my mind, my life.
Thank you very much to all 6 of you leaders. Now, last week, you at home got an opportunity to vote for your favorite leader. Let's take a look at our scoreboard to see who scored the highest votes.
With the country on lockdown, our viewer votes changed drastically. Zizipo is now leading for the first time with 2,456 viewer votes, and Bell is trailing not far behind with 2,322 votes. This means Zizipo gets 1 point. Congratulations.
Now over to our guest judge. The organization provides surveillance and public health research to support government's response to communicable disease threats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zieni Ramarwa from the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. It's great to have you on the show. If you could quickly take us through what the NICD is and what the work behind the organization is.
NICD is an organization that deals mainly with diseases of public health importance, infectious, whether it's communicable or non-communicable. And our main areas of focus include disease surveillance, public health response, and we work hand in hand with the Department of Health.
All right, we're going to have you unpack this COVID-19 infectious virus a bit later on. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Now, allow me to welcome our resident judges. They are Gugulethu Mhlungu, who has over 10 years experience in the world of media. Currently, she's a deputy editor for leading South African magazine and was the winner of the 2015 Columnist of the Year at the Legends Media Awards, as well as Ndumiso Hadebe, a one-day leader alumni who won season 2 of the show. He's an economist by profession as well as an entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause. No audience tonight, but our contestants can do that. Ndumiso, let me quickly come to you. Economically, I have to worry because already we were facing very difficult economic challenges, and we're seeing what's happening with the global economy at the moment. Is South Africa even in a position to scrape past this pandemic when we eventually get to a better place?
Well, I think the current macroeconomic framework enables us to be able to survive this current pandemic, but what counts is how well we're able to deploy the resources and the tools that we have at our disposal. Fortunately, the pandemic has not been as significant in South Africa as it has been in other parts of the world. But what is quite important from an economic perspective, yes, there are a number of tools that we use from a fiscal policy around what government needs to do to deploy resources. There's a response from the South African Central Bank around interest rates and ensuring that capital is cheaper and more affordable. But ultimately, the virus has to be contained. All of those instruments are underlined by, are we winning the battle around finding the virus and containing it as much as possible? So that will be the biggest task, to ensure that our economic fortunes are indeed secured in accordance to the budget that was pronounced earlier this year.
Thank you very much. I'll quickly go back to our guest judge. What could we have done better to ensure that we're almost free of this virus? We heard that the first alerts came about late last year from China, and in a matter of months, it has completely ripped through the global community. As South Africans, when we first heard and when we first realized how serious this was, how could we have better responded?
I think as South Africa, whatever we've done so far, we've done really well. I believe the president in announcing whatever measures, it's a step-by-step thing. And also, we can't just rely on government. There's a role for everybody. If we're saying wash your hands, if you wash your hands, you don't know how many cases you've averted. So it is very important that everybody plays their role.
Thank you very much, judges, and to our guest judge. When we come back, we'll talk more about the coronavirus pandemic outbreak. Do stay with us. Siphining namugele one day leader khona la SABC 1 igama ngingu-Pearl Shongwe. On the 15th of March, President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a state of national disaster as a result of the outbreak of the Covid-19. Now, stringent restrictions have been put in place to curb the virus from spreading, including school restrictions or closures, travel restrictions and bans on large-scale gatherings. Now, such a declaration can last, for months on end and can be even extended or cancelled depending on where we are. Mzansi, how did we get to this point? Here's some information about the coronavirus outbreak. Do take heed. Infectious diseases have had major impact in world history. The most life-costing was the Spanish flu of 1918. In South Africa, 300,000 died within 6 weeks, which represented 6% of the entire population at the time. This was the most devastating pandemic of modern times, killing more than 50 million people around the world in just over a year. Nearly 100 years later, we could find ourselves in the same position. The novel coronavirus outbreak began in Wuhan, China, late last year. It went on to take more than 800 lives in that country within a few weeks. The World Health Organization declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Cases of the virus expanded to touch almost every corner of the globe. The World Health Organization gives the coronavirus the name Covid-19. The first cases of the virus to be detected in South Africa was a trio who returned to the country from Italy. The World Health Organization announces COVID-19 is now a pandemic. There are now more than 118,000 cases in 114 countries, while over 4,291 people have lost their lives, and the numbers just keep growing. On the 15th of March, President Cyril Ramaphosa declares the coronavirus a national disaster. The virus impacts public life in many ways. Public gatherings are banned, sporting and musical events are cancelled or postponed. Panic buying becomes rife around the world. Fear and anxiety leave many anxious and distressed. Businesses of all sizes and in all sectors are disrupted, threatening supply chains, production, revenue, and jobs. Scientists say the coronavirus could be on the scale of the H1N1 influenza strain that sparked the Spanish flu. The Department of Health has asked the South African public to intensify good hygiene practices. Wash your hands frequently. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Avoid close contact with people who may be sick. We're going to chat a bit more to our guest judge this evening. We've seen these restrictions being put in place. We're told how to react to this virus. A lot of quarantining has been happening. But what actually happens when we self-isolate?
So the truth of the matter is we evaluate every situation. If you are able, we ask you those questions and then we tell you what you need to do and what you need not to do. Because the whole idea is actually not to be as close with others because we want to interrupt the transmission. So, yeah.
What are some reassuring facts that we can give to the public to try and allay their fears? Because we've seen the reaction. It's been big, it's been panic, we're shopping for the next 3 months. How we've reacted has not really been a true reflection of what the situation is.
Yes.
So give us some facts that will perhaps put us at ease, knowing that life can still continue for as long as we put those safety measures and hygiene measures in place.
So people should not forget that the basics, every time you go back to the basics, you always win. Because if you do your part, for example, wash your hands. I mean, we're preaching what people should be doing every day. If you tune in TV, everybody's talking about that. You do what you have to do. You know, you're washing of hands, you know, the hygiene and making sure that your cough doesn't reach other people and infect other people. So the panic is really mostly, you know, accompanied by lack of information. So keep yourself informed. So there is really no room for panicking. Don't panic, because once you panic, you start to forget the basics.
All right, thank you very much. Judges, now coming up next, our leaders will debate the issue at hand. Sanwana Masbuya. One-day leader Pearl Shongwe. We are discussing the coronavirus outbreak. Our question to our leaders tonight is, if you were the president of South Africa, how would you respond to a global pandemic that's affecting us as a country? Now, as mentioned at the top of the show, we're doing things slightly differently today. Our leaders are going to share their manifesto on how they would deal with a pandemic such as this one. Before we hear from them, let us see the house rules for tonight.
For this episode, we're changing things up with the new presidential debate structure. Here are the new debate rules. You have 60 seconds to propose, 60 seconds to be questioned by the judges, 30 seconds to be challenged by a fellow contestant, and 30 seconds to conclude.
Our leaders are clear on the rules. Leader 6, you're the first to go. Please give us your opening statement. Your 60 seconds start now.
My fellow South Africans, during a pandemic such as the outbreak of Covid-19, we are only as healthy and as safe as the most vulnerable people in our society. As civilians, we must take every precaution possible, from good personal hygiene to actions like social distancing, self-isolation and quarantine where appropriate. The private sector must provide paid leave for all workers and fundamentally reimagine the healthcare sector, and including the pharmaceutical industry. In terms of the state, we need to recognize that containment is key for controlling the virus. We see this being particularly successful in South Korea, for example. We must provide free testing and healthcare to those in need as per our obligation under Section 27 in the Constitution. We must work alongside the third sector and private sector in food security initiatives. We must implement unemployment benefits for individuals who will lose work during this time, and ensure that our frontline medical staff are catered to in the most holistic way possible. We must act swiftly to combat the outbreak on all fronts that we are facing. Otherwise, the alternative is a massive loss of life, and that is not something that we can currently face as a country.
Thank you very much, Leader 6. Time is up. I'll come to Googs, who's going to quiz you on your opening statement. Go ahead.
Belle, you referred to the example of South Korea, and of course they went for the large-scale testing. The Minister of Health a few weeks ago told us that our current testing capacity is about 5,000 tests a day. That's able to increase to 15,000 and potentially 30,000. How would you suggest we reach the levels that South Korea had reached, given obviously the unique circumstances we are in, and particularly fiscal circumstances that South Africa is in?
I think mobile testing centres are probably, if that is even feasible, I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it, that we can get testing centres outside of the big metropolitan areas, because obviously although testing and transmission of Covid-19 is going to be quite highly concentrated in those areas, it is likely to spread. So I think we should not only have these mobile testing centres, but also implement, or rather build on existing infrastructure that we have that it can cope with more testing. I think that's essential in terms of combating the spread, because we not only need to worry about people themselves getting sick, but individuals carrying Covid-19.
Thank you very much. Time is up, Leader 6. Leader 4, you're going to challenge Leader 6. Go ahead.
Belle, I have a problem with the recommendation you make about the private sector having to provide full paid leave for all employees. We have just reached a technical recession. Our economy has not been the greatest in the past few years. So how do you then recommend that we still maintain a good economic stance and give people paid leave?
Okay, I think it's very important to note that companies in the private sector generate huge amounts of profits, and not only can they afford to do this, but we need to understand
these huge amounts.
Sure, but we can always amend tax laws at the moment to allow that their corporate social responsibility
30
allocation.
seconds is up. contestants, thank you very much. Leader 6, your final 30 seconds start now.
We are living through another pandemic which has rocked the entire world to its core. As much as we are frightened, we must remain strong and we must remain calm. The burden of combating COVID-19 lies with each and every one of us, but it is a particularly heavy duty for the private sector and for the state, both of whom must rise to the challenge in addressing it. We must be at the forefront of this battle in order to protect the citizens of South Africa. Specifically as the state, we must take meaningful steps to uphold the human rights of all South Africans as enshrined in our Constitution.
Thank you very much, Leader 6. Time is up. More time, more engagement. We're moving right along to our next leader, Leader 1. Your 60 seconds start now.
So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to generally declare states of national emergency. This is important to create a national consciousness of the problem. When we deal specifically with health, we'd say firstly would reserve funds for the vaccine that is currently being developed so that we can ensure access by the time that it is perfected. Secondly, we're going to have designated hospitals that specifically deal with COVID so that we don't risk the lives of people who are already in hospitals. Lastly, we're going to employ more officials so that we don't burden the health officials that we have, especially with high work hours. Especially when it comes to trade, we need to ensure that we maintain good trade relations with good diplomatic and trade relations as opposed to significant trade restrictions. This is important as China recently declared that they are planning to proceed with commerce. When we keep these relations, it means that we can negotiate lower prices in a time when we're experiencing a technical recession. The other thing when it comes to education is that we need to implement e-learning. University South Africa needs to standardize data-free learning for university students so that we can easily access
Thank you very much.
Time's
up, Leader 1. Ndumiso, I'll come to you. Questions for our contestant.
Gugulethu, you made mention of a number of interventions. I think the biggest one here, given South Africa's budget currently and the credibility of South Africa's budget being based on shrinking the public wage bill, you highlighted that the employment of more officials is one of the interventions that would be required. How would that work from a budgetary perspective?
So I think what is important here, what is important to note as far as the economic consequences, the importance of employing more people means that people who are unemployed are people who then get jobs. As far as the budget is concerned, we think because we are at a time of crisis, very strict measures need to be taken. So what that looks like is fairly cutting the amount that other people have in order to accommodate more people. Because if they don't do that, they also work longer hours and don't get the benefit.
How would you respond to the call from labor unions in that respect? Because they would vehemently detest that view.
Again, in times of national crisis, laws don't apply uniformly, so we don't treat things as. Therefore, even if they would call for their workers to earn the same amount, if they can't prove that they act in their best interest...
Thank you very much, Leader 1. Leader 2, you can ask questions and engage.
You'd said that you'd like to preserve funds so that you are able to fund for vaccines. Would you rather not exhaust your funds in ensuring that you contain the virus before it expands to other people and become a greater enormous danger to society?
So the two are not mutually exclusive. So firstly, as far as containing the virus, we're already receiving a lot of assistance from countries like Germany, countries like China, who provide us with money, as well as their personnel, as well as material that we can use to test and try to contain the virus.
It was said
we
that
can still have reserves
it was
too.
a hawk statement that Germany is going to be giving us 2.5
Unfortunately,
million.
time is up, contestants. Leader 1, you have 30 seconds to wrap up your debate.
I also concede we best deal with this matter when we protect the most vulnerable members of our society. What this looks like is, one, also protecting individuals who are poor, giving them free access to things like sanitizers and all of the things that they need to maintain hygiene. This also actually looks like helping people who are homeless, because we cannot pretend like the spread of this disease isn't easy. So every person must be conscientized, every person must receive the necessary assistance, because that's how you contain a pandemic that easily
Time is up. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our third debate now, and that contestant is going to be Leader 3. Your 60 seconds start now.
I instigate liaising with the African Union for continental military-to-military planning exercise and operations to be conducted to deal with the pandemic. Armies will be facilitated to conduct searches for vaccines and palliative drugs, and they're trained to operate in a world of bioweapons with personal protective gear that is necessary in an affected environment and huge medical establishment, as well as deep-bench research capabilities that can be applied to tactical treatments. Now, our military bases, which have well-resourced health facilities, will be used for skills development by training staff to recognize symptoms and to collect data for epidemiological reasons, as well as to assist us in building an extra layer of defense against the epidemic. Now, the lack of infrastructure in certain areas will be overcome by the use of technology, specifically mobile devices that will be linked to regional hospitals as well as care centers. Traditional healing will also be integrated into the Western health delivery systems. In resource-constrained settings, traditional medicine has can provide access to treatment where expensive imported pharmaceuticals cannot. And it makes the research...
Time is up. Thank you very much, Leader 3. Our guest judge will have an opportunity to ask you questions.
Okay.
Thank you. You mentioned mobile testing stations. So what kind of, do you think the type of test that you use has got anything to do with whether it will work or not?
Sorry?
The type of test that you use.
So these mobile devices that will be placed in these centers.
Yes.
So the main objective of that is because we have very few hospitals that are actually well resourced. So if our private-public partnerships, as well as other organizations within the private sector, can help us to place these in areas where everyone can meet, then people will be able to test themselves instead of having crowds of people in same spaces with limited resources.
Any other question, Judge? That is all. All right, Leader 3, anything that you would like to add while you still have the time?
Yes. So basically what I'm proposing is disease surveillance, which includes collection, analysis, and interpretation.
Right. Unfortunately, time is up. We had to give you those final 3 seconds. Now, Leader 5 is going to challenge you. Your 30 seconds start now.
In terms of a national crisis like a pandemic, we do not employ the military because that is the state of emergency. We employ the Disaster Management Act. So on those bases, what you've just said cannot be implemented because it does not fall under the
Why
act.
we need to employ the military is that right now we're dealing with something that cannot be scaled. We don't know what it's going to grow into, and we need people that will be able to deliver in the face of danger.
Like not right because
Militaries,
in terms of a pandemic,
what happens where South Africa doesn't have the resources and we need to go to
Thank you
other
very much for
countries
your engagement. Leader 3, you have 30 seconds to close your debate.
As I was saying, that what I'm proposing is disease surveillance, which includes collection, analysis, and interpretation of large volumes of data that originate from various sources, which will assist us in predicting, observing, and minimizing the harm caused by the pandemic. And it will increase our knowledge about factors that contribute to these circumstances. A virus cannot be single-handedly defeated by a state or even a single stakeholder. We need all parties to come together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader 3. Again, just a couple of seconds there in that debate, giving away her seconds. Nonetheless, we'll go to our judges just to get comments and impressions on that first debate.
I think quite a good start. I think we've managed to touch on some of the key issues. I think Belle focusing quite a lot on dealing with the most vulnerable in society, which is quite a key point, I think, not just for South Africa, but for the whole world to contain this pandemic. I think that was quite important. The role of ensuring that the most vulnerable economically are able to then take the measures to protect themselves, which may involve staying at home. And I think that's quite important, is how do we go about then protecting people who are at the coalface or likely to be at the coalface of the pandemic, and also knowing how precarious the economic positions are. I thought that was quite important. And the reference to South Korea I thought was also quite interesting, because again, there is an opportunity to learn from other countries. I also thought, Ndumiso, your focus on how do we go about upscaling or increasing the number of people who are able to respond. I mean, that is one of the ways that some countries have managed to do it. But of course, South Africa has limits on I mean, this pandemic finds us in a very interesting time. Both you and Ndumiso spoke about it earlier, where the economy is, and already we're seeing projections of growth for this year, which are not looking good. So there's this delicate balance that needs to be struck between the human resource and financial resources we need, but also the reality of where we find ourselves. So I think some of the issues, a good balance of the issues. I do think the state of emergency, both implied by Zizipo and also mentioned by you, I think you guys didn't go deep enough into how different would a state of emergency differ from the state of disaster. But overall, I think quite an interesting first round of debates.
Thank you very much. Now for you at home, the voting lines are officially open and will only close on Monday afternoon at 12 midday. Keep voting for your favorite leader by SMSing the word leader. The number yabo we SMS line here to 834708 at a cost of 150 an SMS. Nikumbule, your votes will be revealed at the top of next week's episode. We're going to cool down, and when we return, we get to our next round of debates. Things very interesting tonight.
as the NYDA, we're very excited with the change that comes with the new government. The presidency in particular is very much focused on young people, and the NYDA plays a central role in implementing the vision of government as it relates to its youth. We're going to introduce new and innovative funds, and we're going to partner with other entities like the Department of Small Business to bring comprehensive packages of support to young people who want to be and are passionate entrepreneurs. We'll be upgrading many of our service centers, and we'll be working with entities like the Department of Employment and Labor and our social partners, Harambee and the Youth Employment Service.
We'd like to thank the NYDA, who are our partners and supporters, for that very important message. If you've just joined us, welcome to One Day Leader. This is Season 8, Konalagu SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Tonight, we've asked our leaders to share a declaration on how they would deal with a very serious infectious disease outbreak. The question posed to them tonight is, if you were the president of South Africa, how would you respond to a global pandemic in the country? Let us move on to our next round of debates. Leader 4, it's your turn. Your 60 seconds start now.
In addition to declaring a national state of disaster, we need to also implement solutions that can help us to take care of our vulnerable and also empower our SMEs. We think that in as much as pandemics are a period of panic and are a period of catastrophe for the vulnerable, they are also a period of great economic benefit for bigger corporations. We think that we need to empower our SMEs to be able to distribute things like sanitizers, vitamins, and all such medical supplies that huge corporations can't be able to mass produce and to greatly decrease the prices. The Competition Tribunal needs to step in and say huge corporations such as Johnson & Johnson don't have to decrease greatly the prices of things like sanitizer so that smaller businesses can be able to penetrate the market and also distribute. We need to provide these things for free as well to people who are vulnerable, who live in the township, who cannot be able to purchase for themselves. We think it is important to use already established initiatives such as the 1,000 businesses in 100 days by the NYDA, pull in more people who are starting businesses in the pharmaceutical industry and
Time's
support
up. Thank you
them.
very much, Leader 4. Ndumiso, you'll get an opportunity to ask questions to Leader 4.
Sure. I think the biggest thing with this virus is that it has suspended economic activity. So even in the distribution of sanitizers and so on and so forth, it creates certain limitations. Even some of the corporates that you've listed are facing financial strain where they're looking for bailouts. How exactly, I'm interested as to how exactly would that work as you've outlined in this particular intervention if there are all of these challenges at hand?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to realize that a pandemic already means that there's going to be economic downturn. But we think to avoid a long-term effect of that, we need to use things like the Competition Tribunal to make sure that those companies who do have stockpiles left of wipes and sanitizers and vitamins and all of those do not flood the markets and crowd out the smaller businesses. Yeah, I think we can't avoid such economic downturn, but we can make sure that we curb it in the long term.
Leader 6, you're up for the challenge. Your 30 seconds start now.
Yeah. Zanele, my biggest issue with your case is that the distribution of burden seems very strange. It's very odd that you're going to try to get SMEs to suddenly roll out massive quantities of hand sanitizer and other important necessities when the state is doing nothing. What is the role of the state under your model?
I am saying that in addition to announcing a state of disaster, the SMMEs need to then be supported. I'm not saying they take the responsibility of then supplying these things. But in addition to the corporates that are supplying, the SMMEs need to be supported. That's what I'm saying.
Sure, but then what is the state doing? It doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much. Time is up. Leader 4, you have 30 seconds to conclude your debate.
I have said that a national state of disaster has been implemented, which means that things like limiting movement of people, things like enabling individuals who are vulnerable to access vitamins, to be able to use already existing mechanisms through the Department of Health will be implemented. What we need to look at is the fact that COVID-19 has not affected us in South Africa as much as it has affected other countries. We need to learn and try to use this opportunity as a way to uplift our economy and bring it back from the downturn that it has been. And this we do through protecting our SMMEs, because we know that
Thank you very much. Your time is up, Leader 4. Leader 2, it's your turn. Your 60 seconds start now.
During a time of an epidemic, if you think the status quo truly reflects where you stand as a nation, that means you're wrong and you're behind. So it means that we need to plan ahead for whatever is going to happen. The planning ahead requires for us to suffocate the current existing numbers of the quarantine or of the virus in our country. How then do we suffocate the current numbers of the existing problems in the country? We need to have our shipping ports and boarding gates having a lot of people that are there, that are able to test, that are able to detect, and quarantine methodologies that are placed into place. Now, if we have a problem, since we have a problem of infrastructure and possibility of resources with other places, what we need to do is that at provincial level, we need to have each and every province having a quarantine place and a testing center. And if there is no place to use as a quarantine center, use the town hall and have McQueen tents and mobile clinic systems placed into place. And since that there is also a shortage of staffs in society, we need to call upon our retired nurses, our retired veterans, police and soldiers to become active stakeholders and citizens and be stewards that are actually assisting the whole society. And also to call upon the student nurses to become part of this whole process.
Leader 2, your time is up. I'll come to our guest judge for Q&A. Our guest judge has a question for you, Tabani.
Yes, I actually like it because where you're hitting it, it's actually where we want everybody to go to reduce the number of transmissions. But I wish you had more time to actually tell me more, because it could actually work. But I wanted to find out if you're going to use halls, to quarantine people. Do you really think that will work?
Leader 2 has time. You can answer that.
Okay. This is what happens. We are going to be benchmarking our system and system of working from what they are using currently in South Korea, whereby they had the same number of coronavirus detection on the 29th of February as Italy. But today they have 64 deaths, while Italy has about 1,000 deaths. What they did in South Korea, they actually decided to bring a massive number of people to go around testing people. For every million, you find that they're testing 5,200 people. They already have 2,700 people being tested. So everyone that has already been tested, they take them, exclude them from the rest of the society and keep them at a secluded place. So we don't want to keep them at their families, at their homes.
Time is up. Thank you very much, Leader 2. Leader 1, you can challenge him.
2 questions. Firstly, how do you fund having a lot of areas where individuals can be quarantined and the material that is used? But secondly, what makes that quarantine area specific? Because we tend to assume that just because people are quarantined that we're effectively dealing with the matter. What prevents the spread in that area? What prevents those people leaving while they're still contaminated?
Okay, this is what happens. Now, the first question was, how then do we fund the resources? How do we get the resources to fund this? We need to ask our retail shops like Shoprite. Shoprite actually makes...
Leaders, be careful to keep your questions short. You are out of time. We're going to give you 30 seconds to wrap it up.
Okay. In the process of us quarantining or fighting coronavirus, we need to be an active society that creates active citizens. So we'll use social media through the arts and media and culture department to go around educating people, so that we can have active citizens like Umama from Taxi Rent, who said that she cannot be caught off guard by coronavirus because she has a policy of saying that cleanliness is next to godliness. And she has already been actively rejuvenating her immune system through the Jing-Jan medication. So we need to teach our people
Time
that
is
hygiene
up. Thank you
coronavirus.
very much, Leader 2. That is where we will leave it for now. We're going to go now to Leader 5, who is going to be our final contestant to give us his thoughts around the issue tonight. Your 60 seconds start now.
The virus is a member of the coronavirus that made the jump from animals to humans. Reducing the spread of the disease in terms of the Disaster Management Act of 2003 will require the testing and subsequent isolation and treatment of those who've tested positive quarantined at Robben Island, led by the National Institute for Communicable Diseases in partnership with the Department of Health, so that we can curb the spread of the disease in our communities, utilizing the municipal disaster management to facilitate community-based surveillance so that we can try to track the disease in our communities. Since this virus jumped the human to animal barrier, and agriculture is one of the strategic sectors of our economy, we deploy the Department of Agriculture in partnership with Agri-SA to farms so that our livestock can get inspected as well. In terms of the Public Finance Management Act of 1999, redirect the corporate social responsibility funds to state-owned entities like ESCOM and SAA so that they can be kept afloat and keep the economy running during this time. In terms of Chapter 3, Section 21 of the Electoral Act, in consultation with political parties and the chairperson of the IEC, postpone preparations for next year's local government elections indefinitely.
All right, thank you very much, Leader 5. You gave away a couple of your seconds. Googs, any questions?
In terms of the idea of quarantining large amounts of people on, you mentioned Robben Island, which of course was one of the proposals that was made by the economic freedom fighters. How would that process work, and why Robben Island? Why not localize quarantining perhaps in homes or certain community facilities? So why that particular proposal?
The reason why it's not going to work is because just last week, a family tested positive, a father refused to test, and they ran away because they did not want to be given all the necessary information relating to the virus. So that says that we do not have, if we're going to give that liberty, we won't have, self-isolation is not going to work because people can decide themselves that they want, whether, like their movements, basically. And why Robben Island? Because currently we've got just nearly 200, and I feel that if they are in Robben Island away from the mainland, it's going to be easy to curb the disease so that we can able to monitor it then to the people there.
All right, Googs, any other questions?
The family that you mentioned that was in Gauteng, which
Unfortunately,
eventually...
time is up. We'll have to leave it there. Leader 5, well, rather, Leader 3 is going to challenge you, Leader 5. Go ahead.
Well, see, I feel that you've given us solutions of how to contain the virus, but as of locating the virus, I don't understand how
No, you
your
didn't
policies-
listen. I said we are going to utilize the municipal disaster management to facilitate community health-based surveillance.
Okay.
Why this is important?
I understood that, and you spoke about Robben.
But that's the answer.
Robben
Because
Island.
you're saying
Okay.
I didn't give you
You've
the
just
answer.
clarified, thank you. And you spoke about Robben Island, but what about families in townships that live in shacks? How are you
I'm
going to
saying-
move the entire Khayelitsha, the entire Gangelizwe to Robben Island?
Not everyone in culture has it. So when you use a community-based
Thank you very
health
much,
surveillance-
leaders. Leader 5, you have 30 seconds to conclude.
Let us remember, we're not only fighting a pandemic, but an infodemic. Social media has become both an indispensable source of vital information and a fertile ground for dangerous rumor mongering. Therefore, it must be regulated so that we can curb fake news and panic buying to prevent the spread of chaos. How we do this through a collaborative effort between the Department of Communications, Africa Check, and tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Twitter, so that we can combat fraud and misinformation about the virus and elevate authoritative content on their platforms.
Thank you very much. Perfectly timed there, Leader 5. Ndumiso, I'll start with you. Just your impressions on the last 3 debates.
Last 3 debates, Vosi, I think the spin-off that you include with respect to your solutions around agriculture and the sustainability of food security is something that has been missing from, I think none of the other contestants mentioned, which I think was quite important in that respect, and it was forward-looking in that sense. So congratulations on that. Tobani, I found your solutions to be very practical. And to a large extent, I loved the notion that you were emphasizing around active citizenry, particularly because of the limited fiscal space that we currently have. And around the public wage bill, it's highly contentious right now. The credibility of our budget, as pronounced by the Minister of Finance, is embedded on that particular notion that we will be able to cut the public sector wage bill. You directly addressed that particular question by calling upon the use of active citizenry and retired medical practitioners to assist in such an instance, which I think was quite a brilliant one and something that needs to be included in the discussion. Zanele's intervention was quite interesting in the sense that currently we have the broad-based Black economic empowerment, and what you mentioned around the support and empowering SMMEs, I linked it to enterprise and supplier development and how that in this time of crisis can be used to sort of uplift the trajectory of South African SMMEs. I did think, however, that it was slightly limited in the sense that it would be focused on pharmaceuticals and the medical industry, whereas there are all of these other industries. But I think it's also quite an important intervention in that respect if we are going to redesign our social and economic planning. So overall, some of the propositions that have been put forward are policy propositions that have been missing from the discussion, and you can congratulate yourself for tabling such key inputs.
Well done on your debates tonight. A couple of you received great compliments, so brilliant work. What can we expect? What more can we expect, rather, from our leaders? They've done a stunning job tonight. Now, we don't have a studio audience tonight. That means that it's going to be up to our judges to allocate points. How will they allocate those points? Who will receive those points? We don't know. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back to One Day Leader. Mzansi asithemba ukuthi nawe lapho ubukele khona uzwile namhlanje okungakwenza ukucabangisise kahle ngale nkinga esibhekane nayo ye-coronavirus. It's time for us now to hear from our judges as they give us their remarks and of course the verdict on how they've scored our leaders and of course how the points will be awarded. As you can see, there are 6 contestants, but only 3 will be walking away with a single point each. Ndumiso, your parting judges, your parting words rather, and of course the verdict on which leader you've selected to get a point.
So I think the biggest thing for me was what is the biggest takeaway or policy intervention that could have been raised today by our leaders here this evening. And there were some key inputs that were made which I think are quite practical and can be implemented as of tomorrow. So all of you guys can congratulate yourself from that element. And I think when we were looking at the scoring, it's getting difficult.
Would you rather I give them the names?
You rather give them.
They've done the tough job. Now they just want to leave the rest up to me. It's okay, Mzansi. Let me let you know just in this order. Tabani, you're the first to get a point. Congratulations. Of course, I'll announce the next leader as we move on to getting Gugu's impressions from tonight.
Yes, I think this was one of the more difficult debates because I think it gave an opportunity for all of the leaders to really just speak. They were given more time. They were given, I think, an opportunity to really show us how much thought they'd given, how much research they'd done, which meant the scores across the board were pretty high. So us whittling it down to 3 names, we required quite a lot of time. We went backwards and forwards and we disagreed. But I think the 3 that we settled on are the 3 who did. So I think all 6 were phenomenal tonight. And even just settling on the 3 was very, very difficult. But I think we've made the right choice.
Congratulations to our next leader tonight who scored themselves a point. 2 is next to 3. So you get the point. Leader 3. All right, we're going to get our final impressions and then, of course, give you the name of our final leader who walks away with a point.
It was not, I'm trying very hard not to look at the person. It's difficult, but it was very difficult for us to come to this conclusion. And I actually loved to hear you guys, bring forth what you think should be happening. Some of it, it's not really already happening, which says a lot about you. And some of it, it's practically, you can just implement it, from your SMMEs and, your regulations and all those things. So I think it's very encouraging to see South Africans engaging to that level. So congratulations to all of you.
All right, so thank you very much. And of course, congratulations to our third and final leader who walks away with a point tonight. And that is congratulations, leader 5. You get a point. Now, unfortunately, due to the risk of the coronavirus, we do not have a studio audience today in studio. But that should not stop you from voting for your favorite leader. Get those thumbs working. Now, let's quickly have a look at the episode and overall scoreboard thus far.
At the end of this episode, Gugulethu is still lagging way behind with 1 point, while Vusi and Bal are on equal footing with 9 points each. Kushubile.
Mbukeli-ke nawe lapho khona ungakhohlwa ukuthi we'll be showing your voting results at the top of next week's episode. Voting lines do close on a Monday afternoon. Ngithanda ukubonga all our candidates for doing their best tonight. Our judges, kanti-ke nanlapho emakhaya noma ngabe kuphi la nibukele khona. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's episode. Now, next week, we will be discussing yet another thought-provoking topic. Before I go, I'll leave you with this quote from Bishop Desmond Tutu. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. Let us all be active citizens. Mzansi, I encourage you to do something. Doesn't matter how small your contribution is, it's bound to make a difference. From myself, Shongwe, and the rest of the One Day Leader team, it's good night.